next is Walsh again. 2 more clips here. Walsh first.
Now, I will say that the one, open border stuff and all the rest of it, that's one thing. But the message in the one ad we played about, hey, we should all get along and love our enemies. Like that is, it's benign. I mean, there's nothing offensive about it unless you're AOC. There's nothing offensive or outrageous about it. But I do think that this kind of message, and I get sometimes this is what Christians like to lead with because it's the most crowd pleasing. Love your enemy, love everybody, get along. Okay. But it's not a very useful message. You can say love your enemy, and that's scriptural, it's true. But you should be saying something useful about that. Like, it's not enough to just say, well, love your enemy. What does that mean exactly? What do you mean you should love our enemies? Does that mean we have to get along with them all the time and always be smiling and cheerful and we can never disagree? They showed a lot of clips of people screaming at each other. And like I said, in many of those, we don't know the context for those clips, but in many of them, it seemed like these were demonstrations where you had 2 sides yelling at each other. Are we sure that both sides were being hateful? Some of those clips might be people who are standing for the truth and standing for what they believe in and standing up to those who represent evil. So that's not hatred. There's nothing wrong with that. Just because someone is yelling and angry doesn't automatically make them hateful. And by the way, even if they're being hateful, that's not necessarily wrong because there are things in the world that we should hate. There are things that God hates. Evil and sin are those things. We should hate evil. We should hate sin. I don't know if any of those clips are from any demonstrations outside of a drag queen story hour, for example, but those are the kinds of demonstrations that sometimes get a little heated. The people that are protesting the drag queen story hours or the so-called family-friendly drag shows, are they hateful? Yeah, in a certain sense, because they hate the sexualization and grooming of children. They are hateful towards that act, and they should be. So yes, we should love our enemies. We should have love, but that means standing for what is right, standing for what's true. It means wanting the best for people, but wanting the best for someone also means not going along with those things that are destroying them. And that has to be part of the message. If it's not, then I'm not sure what we achieve.
Okay, before we respond to this, let me just say that Derek did put up here this, did Braxton really miss my super chat, but read my comment immediately after? Derek, there are new rules coming now, and the new rules coming down the pike apparently are, if you make a super chat, you have purchased the certainty, well, the extreme likelihood that I will read and we'll talk about your comment. But the payment might not necessarily be for the comment that you attach to the payment. It could be any comment that you've made.
And you're making this up right now.
I'm making it up as we go. That's how the best rules get started. But he says, going off of what Gerald said, I find myself becoming more and more anti-creedal, like some Baptists. What are your thoughts on creedalism? Let's just tackle that real quick before we go back to Walsh. Pritchett,
I have no problem with creedalism. I give my 3 creeds.
The Bible has creeds.
Yeah, the Bible itself has creeds. But the no creed, but the Bible's also a creed. Everyone says that, but yeah, the Apostles' Creed's great. The Athanasian Creed's great. The Nicene Creed's great. What's wrong with what's?
Okay.
I mean,
now what did Walsh say that? What's the deal here? He's just rehashing the point we made.
There was a He Gets Us commercial. I think he was responding
during the
to that.
Super Bowl, the Jesus commercial.
And there was people screaming and stuff, and he was complaining that a lot of people go straight to the statement, love your enemies, but doesn't ever say anything about it. And what I want to say is, going back to, let's do some hermeneutic stuff briefly. Mm-hmm. Okay, so love in our context, right, can be applied to anything from your parents to your spouse to pizza and your dogs and Takis for me. I love Takis, right? So
that's what?
In our context. Love can be...
You love all that stuff. I love you too.
Right. But we're, when it comes to Scripture, we're low context readers, right? We don't have all of the necessary background information.
I didn't grow up there.
Cultural, right. But they were high context. So love your enemies when Jesus says it in the context of Roman rule over Israel, and you've got a hotbed of zealotry out there in Galilee with the Maccabees, in recent memory, all of this, right? And eschatological expectation for something to happen, some kind of deliverance or big event or whatever. And you've got all of that going on. It's in that context that Jesus said, love your enemies, right? So when you just say, I am somewhat sympathetic to what Matt says here, because when you just say love your enemies, in our context, taking that statement of Jesus out of its, that context into a context where we use that language for anything from puppies to Skittles to whatever, I do think that is important. I mean, you can get a general message by just saying love your enemies. He's right. That is a crowd pleaser. But there has to be something else to that, because you can get heated with somebody without even being mean, but just heated and bold, and even heated argument with someone. And it's still, like you said earlier in the podcast, that can be done in an act of love, even if the person doesn't want to hear what you're saying. So,
or doesn't like the way you're saying it,
But I mean, as someone who has heard "it's not what you say, it's the way you said it" for my entire life,
and never listened to it.
No, no, I have. Sometimes. Hey, I've apologized on this channel for going a little bit too far.
You have. I was just kidding. I
Yeah.
didn't mean to
Sometimes
I forget
they're right, and sometimes they're wrong, and that requires wisdom to know when someone thinks that you're actually, it's the way you're saying that, man, is wrong, and if it is, it takes wisdom to recognize it, but it also takes wisdom to recognize, no, you're just sore about it. You just don't like it. So that's what you can say, because you're not saying anything about the content of what I said, right? So you're just going to ad hominem. You're meanie. Okay, well, that's a way that you're trying to get out of this. You just have to have wisdom to know which is which. But I do think that he's kind of right that not every time you're amped up about an issue, and we've pounded the tables in here about abortion, about stuff in the past. So we do get amped up. But that doesn't mean, that means we're not being loving. In fact,
that could be the loving thing to do.
So this, I think, is probably the smartest thing he said compared to his previous thing. But
so who's up next? Knowles?
Yeah. So I'm okay.
Mr. Knowles, I have an awkward question for you about masturbation, of all things.
Whoa. Well, with that teaser, what were you going to say?
I say, so I'm actually okay with this response. You never said what you think of it.
I thought it was a rehash to a certain degree of what we said earlier about nice doesn't always mean, all that stuff, right?
Right.
Okay.
So now,
wait, real quick before we go on to the next thing.
Yeah.
Trinity College of the Bible and Theological Seminary in Evansville, Indiana wants you as a student. Don't go away. We got more clips. We got more to talk about, and the best is yet to come. At least the most provocative.
Right.
But we would love if you would like to learn and earn your degree in Bible college and seminary with the setup you're experiencing right now. Whether that's you're driving down the road and you're listening on a phone that's plugged into your speaker. Don't look at the screen. Control yourself. Pritchett looks good today, but not good enough for you to hurt yourself over. and whether you're sitting in front of a desk at work when you should be working, or at home when you should be doing that honey-do list, or whatever it is that you're doing Trinity Radio instead of, you could learn from Trinity Seminary using that same setup, because all of our courses are recorded. You can watch them over and over again on double speed, even just like you do, because we're theology geeks and we know how theology geeks function. So check that out at trinitysem.edu. By the way, there's an 1.5 hour long Leighton Flowers discussion, not on Calvinism, but on systematic theology that you've never heard before unless you're a Trinity student. And also from Tim Stratton on apologetics, from Pritchett on Romans 3:15, all kinds of stuff. So no, 1 Peter 3:15. Sorry, I look at you and I think wrong.